was a challenge for me. Now I love delegation because there's an element of trust in it. But truly, you have your zone of brilliance, systems and processes. I have my zone of brilliance, getting the best out of people in an empathetic, listening, compassionate way. Then trusting others who are better than us in their zone of brilliance to just let them be and let them shine. It is the most, it's hard, you got to let it go because this is our baby, right?
Yeah.
This is our business, our baby, this is our movement, our passion. This is where we make our impact. But letting go and watching and empowering other people and just letting them shine and teach us how great they are and vice versa, it's just this beautiful thing.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen to the everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. The doctor saving lives at your local hospital, the war veteran down the street who risked his lives for our freedom, the police officers and firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling, but there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people, and I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world, others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks of the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and I am live on the line today with Tommy Breedlove. Tommy, are you there?
I'm here, brother. So excited to be here, Richard. Let's do this.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Let me do a quick introduction for our listeners who may not know who you are. Tommy Breedlove is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author and Atlanta-based business relationship and mindset coach who is regularly featured keynote speaker at global events. We were actually just talking before you got on here that you spent your second home is Delta Airlines.
They treat me well.
Before we get too far into this, what I want to talk about first is what it is that you're known for. Why do people reach out to you? What is it that you're known for now?
So I am known for being a corporate executive who almost lost everything, who completely transformed his life. And now I guide others to live with purpose, passion, a life of significance and fulfillment, but without compromising their ambition or drive for success. So I learned my craft and my trade through pain, brother. And now I guide, actually I'm in the purpose and pain business. And so, and this has been over the last 2 months. It's really cool. What I'm truly known for now is helping myself and others build and live legendary lives. And so proud of that.
That's really cool. So, tell me a little bit, how do you do that? How do you help people today? Is it like one-on-one coaching or just speaking? What are the ways that you actually do the helping?
Yeah, so I do in 3 ways, actually 4 ways. So regularly a speaker on podcast and on stages. So it could be at corporate events or private business events or at large trade organizations or other things. So a lot of public speaking. But I also run a one-on-one coaching, and through masterminds and one-on-one coaching, I help people with their business, their mindset, their money, their relationships. And so it's been just a beautiful journey that fell in my lap. If you'd have told me 7 years ago that I was going to be a business mindset and relationship coach and run masterminds and be on stages speaking, I would have laughed you out of the room. And so this found me, and it's a calling in life, and I'm so fulfilled by it, brother.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. I love it when you have, especially, at this point in your life, you're like, everything was building up to something and then it's a massive shift and change. Whereas my life was like at 13, I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That's like what I've been doing
awesome.
for 20 something years now. I
and you're a hero.
That's my wife. Yeah. That's funny. So, tell me a little bit about your origin story. Right here on this show, we talk. Every hero has their origin story. It's where you started to realize that you were different, that maybe you had superpowers, and maybe you could use them to help other people. How did that go down for you?
Yeah. So my story starts in South Atlanta, in a good, solid blue collar part of the world. Grew up. I certainly didn't grow up poor, but I grew up in humble beginnings. No one in my family had ever gone to college or graduated college. I'm actually the first. So that's a really big accomplishment for my family. But here's the sad, honest truth. I grew up in and around violence, mostly inside the home, but also outside the home of every kind. And so the worst thing that happens to you as a young human or a young boy is when you experience certain types of violence, you over time become that violence. And so my origin story through that begins at 18 years old, looking to be the first person to go to college and commit a violent crime. And so I thought my life was over. I thought I was facing 7 years in prison. And by the grace of God and some good lawyers and divine help, it was dropped to misdemeanors, but I was sentenced to 2 years with 1 year suspended, and ended up spending my 19th birthday in jail. So not college or business in my future, it was jail. And so picked myself up and dusted myself off and went from jail to a nuclear waste container factory as a machine operator, to school at night, to the University of Georgia, to Deloitte and Touche, which is a large public accounting and financial consulting firm, in 3 years. And so I went from jail to Deloitte as like, the cage to the corner office. And so I just put my head down and worked. And I thought at the time that the more money, success, power, prestige, and shiny things that I acquired, the happier I would be. And so I went down and I just shot up through the ranks. I just worked really hard at these big M&A, mergers and acquisitions, financial consulting firms, and made it all the way to the top. And when I realized that, and here's part of the hero's journey, I never dealt with some of those wounds from my past. I just thought if I was successful and made money, yada, 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 I would be happy and fulfilled. And that, this is the dream that I'm on, the entrepreneur and corporate dream. And when that didn't fulfill me at 36 years old, when the power didn't fulfill me, the next big check didn't fulfill me. And I was a principal at this new firm. So I made it almost to the top, and started turning to all the bad things in life. So if there was 100 things not to do as a young executive, I checked off 90 of them. And I found myself, after like 3 days of just complete debauchery, laying in a ditch somewhere in Atlanta, looking up at the sky. I was probably doing some multi-million-dollar deal 2 weeks before in some CEO's office. Found myself looking at the sky and said, I don't know what this is, but I'm not going to do this anymore. I am going to figure out what's wrong. And so I went on this mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual journey just to find me. I didn't quit or leave the firm. I just decided to make me my full-time job. And when I went on this massive transformation of me and started developing unconditional love for myself and self-respect, and start to master my mindset, those squirrels in our head that tells us we're not good enough, and actually start healing some of those wounds. And we all have wounds from our origin story. When I started healing those, the most amazing thing happened to me, brother. That's when my money, my success, my network, my friendships, my relationship with my wife, it just went 100x up. And I went from junior partner in the firm to senior partner to being to actually owning part of the practice and elected to the board of directors at 39 years old. So I was at the very top of my game just by doing hard work and investing in myself every day. But here's the cool part. Here's when I knew I was going to help others. All of these other alpha men and women who are driven and want to succeed and want to build businesses, and lawyers and entrepreneurs and corporate executives and managers, people in my network started reaching out to me for help. They're like, hey man, I don't know what you did, but you seem to have peace of mind. You seem to be fulfilled and living with purpose, but you didn't give up your ambition, your success, or your drive for money or just to make impact in this world. How do you do it? And about the 15th person that reached out to me, I'm like, this is a business, and a good one, and a very fulfilling business. And so I sold my equity in the firm and resigned. It took me a little while to do that because you just don't walk away from a big gig at the top of the game. And started doing business, money, mindset, and relationship coaching. And it has exploded, and it's been the most fulfilling thing. So my superpower is to help get the absolute best out of other people with no judgment and walking the journey with them. I'm not a guru on the stage or a psychologist behind them. I've walked the journey. I walk it every day. And that's where this book, this playbook came out, Legendary. And it's a guide to help people build and live a legendary life. And the reason I picked legendary in a world of constant self-promotion, that's the one word that society, our peers, and our family give to us. And we can be a really great legend like an MLK or a great entrepreneur, or we can be a horrible one. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's a playbook about how do we build toward financial freedom? How do we conquer our time and our mindset? But also, how do we do that without losing the relationships of our families and others? And it's what worked in my life, and I've seen it work in countless of others' lives. And that's why we put it in a book form. And that's what this movement, my superpower, are all about, my brother.
That's a really powerful story. I relate to the waking up in the street looking at the sky thing, not personally, but because it's something my dad told me when he was serving in the military in Germany. He had you might call it an evening of debauchery, like you were talking about, and he doesn't remember much of what happened on the evening after the first couple of drinks started, but he remembers he woke up and it was 3 days later and he was under a car on the side of the road in like the ice and snow. And he was like, that is just the worst ever, to wake up and not know where you are, where you've been, or how you got there, and know that like you were in a place where you could have been killed.
And it's humiliating as well, because we know better, and we want better, and we desire better, and we are better. And you have this moment of, what? And it's this moment of pure accountability too. Yeah. It's like, no one puts you here but you. Now it's time to get up, dust yourself off, and move forward. And that's what we did. Sounds like your dad did that too.
Yeah, my dad was excellent. And you know, I tell people all the time, he's one of the primary reasons I have the success of my life that I do, because of the way he raised me. So
sounds like he's legendary.
Yeah, he totally is. But yeah, I understand like where that can, you know, lead people, and then to realize that you can pick yourself up and move past that, and still succeed in spite of it.
I've done it twice. I'm not going to do it a third time, my man.
Third time's a charm, they say. You never know, right? If you go from jail to the top of your game in one spot to debauchery
just walk
to the top
away.
of another game.
Yeah.
Who knows where you'd end up if you did it again. So I want to dive in a little bit on your superpower, right? So the superpower is what you do or build or offer this world that helps solve problems for people. And the way that I've been framing this recently for my guests on the show has been like, if you look at your set of skills that you have, the superpower is the one thing that sort of is the common thread between all of your skills. The thing that you notice is really the driving force behind any of the skills that you have. And you know, like for me, that I've discovered that was like systems and processes. And like the reason I'm good at a lot of things is because I'm really good at understanding the system behind something, and I can pick it up really fast because of that. But just because I've picked up, you know, I can pick up piano and like I might piss my wife off in like 3 weeks. But I'll never be like fantastic at it, because that's, you know, piano is not my superpower. It's just learning systems and processes is where that is for me. And, you know, I can pick up new skills really quickly because of it. I'm just curious for you, have you ever thought about it in that light? Like, what is the one thing that sort of energizes the rest of my skills?
I think the one thing that energizes most of my skills, and it's a soft skill, I think it's empathy and compassion, and it comes from non-judgment. So similar to you, I am a superstar when it comes to all things money, wealth building, and teaching people how to make their business profitable, more efficient, in both personally and professionally. I was taught that by some of the best in the world and practiced that craft for over 20 years. But using that craft that I was taught and that I studied, but because of my background, because of my story, people trust me because I don't judge them, and I give them the gift of going second. I'm very raw, vulnerable, and honest about what I've been through, from the tragedies to the triumphs, the mistakes, and I do it with humility. And that helps very ambitious, driven people. Not only do we help them, be as successful as possible, be the best leader as possible, make the most money as you can, and make the most impact that you can. But how do you do this with, also cultivating, your mindset, your unconditional love for yourself, and having the best relationship you can with the people that are important to you? And so my superpower is taking all of these crafts that I've learned and helping get the best out of others in a non-judgmental, loving, caring, empathetic way. And I think that's where it starts for me. Is I just truly, truly love people. I don't have a really problem with envy and jealousy. I want them to be as successful and happy as possible. And I think my honesty that I walk this journey with them. I think that's what separates me from others. I get I work with coaches. I'm in a mastermind. I have a psychologist. I'm walking this journey every single day, and everything I ask them to do, or the homework, or the stepping in and leaning up to get their best life possible, is the same stuff I do each and every day of my life. And I think it all begins when we serve ourselves first. And you're on this journey because you're doing a lot of body biohacking to be the best possible version that we can be, so that we can serve our communities, our businesses, our families, and our friends as best as we can. And so I think that's my superpower. That's a pretty long-winded answer, but I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, I really like that too, because empathy is one of those soft skills that people don't realize how powerful it is. And my business partner and best friend in a lot of things has that same skill set. And it is amazing to me how quickly he can get another person to open up and trust him completely. And my wife has that skill as well. And it's
beautiful.
Yeah, it's a skill because it's not something you can fake, right? You can't pretend to care about someone. You can't just wish that they have they have good outcomes. You have to you feel it in your bones that you really want them to succeed, right? It's an amazing gift to be able to give someone else, to really hear them and to really care about them. And then when you have that as a starting place, when you bring in the skills that you've learned in your business over, on top of that, it really gives you a powerful way to help those people.
I agree. And it's either you have it or you don't too. And it's something you can continue to cultivate, and you do that through the work and the craft. But it also, I always say to all people, 2 ears and 1 mouth. There's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Now we're on this show to talk, so that's a little different, but I think it's deep listening. I think it's empathetic listening. I think it's compassion listening. And when you really stop and listen to the other person, and you get completely in the here and now, and we're not thinking about the next thing we've got to say, or what next deal we have, or thinking about the past, and you get fully present with people, and you come from a place of service, and you can really hear their wants, their needs, their desires. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for those of us. Sounds like your wife, your business partner. It's also somewhat of a curse. And so you have to be careful with boundaries, because when you take on other people's needs, desires, wants, and or issues, we all have our wounds and our insecurities and our fears. None of us are alone in that world. We have to make sure that we not only work on ourselves, but also set up healthy boundaries so that we don't absorb some of that empathy and compassion that we have.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing too, because you have to protect yourself, but having empathy as your superpower means that you don't think about yourself first, right?
That's right.
And so you have to train yourself to do that. And
that's why I have coaches and mentors all around me to crack that whip.
Yeah. So what's just as an interesting aside, this is actually something that my business partner and I chatted a whole bunch about this last month. Was I have the skill set of empathy, but it's not like a foundational level thing for me. And it's something that I have taught myself because of the whole systems and processes things. I can see the reason it works and how it works. And then like when and we've actually talked about this, like, you know, when he'll talk to someone and his like first thought is, how do I, you know, how can I like find the best thing for them? And like it's the same, like that's someone who's got empathetic, like naturally is just doing that, like it just comes to them, that's how they think. And like my same approach, I might have the same, like this, I might say the same thing or do the same thing with someone, but the way I got there was because I'm like looking at all these different different like inputs and like this whole system that goes into like, okay, I know this would be good for them, that would be good, like I end up at the same place. So it's like for me, it's a learned thing. It's something that I have to think about and put effort into to get to that place. So it's cool to work with people who have that as just like an innate gift, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. But isn't it cool though? That's what makes the world go around, is we all have these superpowers and talents and desires, and system and processes are just important as the work that we do. I would be completely worthless without a unbelievable team and systems and process of people around me. I would just be a balloon that floats away, literally a balloon. But, you know, that we all use as long as we're all using our skills to be of service to others in some way through our entrepreneurial craft or whatever, our work, both in and out of the business. I love the thing of humans, and we're all got our talents, and watching it all work together. Watching it all work together.
My favorite, like, real world aspect of that is if you ever go to, I'm sure Atlanta's like this. You know, I grew up in Southern California, so like San Diego, LA, traffic to me blows my mind, because there are, and not because traffic is like traffic is horrible. I don't like being in it, but I love watching it, because it's like all of these individual people that are all, you know, they're all by themselves, and yet they're all following the same set of rules. And it's like, it is surprising how very little we all crash into each other and kill everyone. Because
another example would be the airport. The other, watching an airport is a very good example of that as well.
I'm sure you see that a lot with all the traveling you do.
Oh, I actually am thinking about writing a book on it, about what I experience in watching an airport. And I don't want to go too down that path, but I'm actually highly considering writing a book on it. And it would be very interesting for those travels. But yeah, it's fascinating. Just this whole human life journey is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you know, that's why we do shows like this one, because I think really getting to understand other people's stories and hearing their stories is what makes the world go round. So
totally. And knowing we're not alone.
Yeah.
On some level, we all want to be seen, heard, and loved. All of us. We all want to be validated. We all want to be respected. And the flip side of that is we're all scared. We're all insecure. We all have these feelings of, what if they figure out I really don't know what I'm doing? Or what if they know my deepest, darkest desires? And the key for this shows like this and just humanity is to know, cut the BS, in that we're not alone. We're human. We all have the same human needs. You know, we can put whatever we want to out there on social media, on our resumes, and our businesses. But at the same time, we just all want to be seen, heard, loved, and respected. And we want to be safe. Period. So cut all the nonsense.
Safe and free and moving forward and doing things that make us feel like we're coming alive.
Indeed. So, and how fortunate we are to be here to have this conversation, right?
Absolutely. It also blows me away that we can even do this, right? Like 10 years ago, we couldn't have done this.
Yeah, we're in two very separate places too.
Yeah. So the flip side of that, and you just hinted on this a little bit, right? Those deep dark places. In this show we talk about the fatal flaw, right? And your fatal flaw, just like Superman has his kryptonite, or Batman's not actually a superhero; he's just a super dedicated ninja. The fatal flaw in your business is something that you have to contend with yourself, that holds you back, that you know has held you back. In either your growth or in taking care of clients or whatever those, you know, something that's held you back. And more importantly than what it is, but how have you dealt with it for people who struggle with the same kind of thing that are listening to the show?
I don't mind telling you what it is either. I know it right off the top of my brain. And again, this is all part of being vulnerable and honest. It's perfectionism, in needing to be put it, like whether it's the book or coaching or speaking, is needing to be perfect. And that's just the little boy wanting to be validated at the end of the day, by the way. That's literally wanting to be affirmed and worried about what others think. And that comes from, and perfectionism for me leads to unrealistic expectations of myself, my team members, my family, and then even people I don't know. And so I have these set of rules and expectations. And when you write a playbook for how to build and live a legendary life, imagine the pressure of that. And then all of a sudden the book does really well. And now I'm holding myself to even another higher level that, perfectionism doesn't exist. And we're not in control of anything except our thoughts, our attitudes, and our actions. And so letting go of the results, putting your best work out there and not letting it shut down the process, and also not letting it, for me, become a tyrant on myself first, and then being a perfectionist tyrant on others and unrealistic expectations. And so how I deal with that every single day. So I'll start with the easy stuff. I have a coach and a set of mentors, and they know this is one of my biggest, if not the biggest kryptonite I have. And they keep me moving. And every single day of my life, not only do I have coaches and mentors I check in with, I also spend a significant amount of time both with a formal and informal gratitude practice. And gratitude for me helps me to be thankful for the things I have, the fortunes. It gets me in the present moment, and it gets me in a state of love and abundance, as opposed to not being good enough, perfectionism, and fear. And so for me, throughout the day, and we practice it as a team, it's almost cute and funny. You would laugh at it, is we're constantly telling each other what we're grateful for, even through the processes. And so for me, gratitude helps with control and perfectionism and the not good enoughs. And finally, this is really, really cool, is this was not my idea. The person who runs my practice, our chief operating officer, and we call her catalyst of goodness, Miss Lindsay Nicole. She's a rock star. She came up with this idea, and it's just been life-changing for me and the team and herself. Is she sends, like, we're very open about our lives. So she has access to, like, who I'm going to dinner with and what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to yoga tomorrow morning and all of the business stuff that we do during the week. And she sends this amazing gratitude, congratulations email at the end of the week. That's the greatest thing I've ever read. And you get to go back and relive everything you did during the week with your family, your friends, for fun, in your business and in your life, and what we accomplished. And it is the coolest thing I've ever seen, because it just overwhelms you with accomplishment, that we've moved the ball forward with gratitude, and that, hey, we are actually making, so we're not constantly the next thing, and that perfection is kicking in. So those are the
Absolutely. That's really cool
tools that I've implemented.
So I find that very interesting, because that's actually my kryptonite as well, is perfectionism. And for me, there was two things that really helped me get over that, in terms of, like, actually shipping products and services to market. Because that was the thing that held my business back for the longest time, was, like, and my wife laughs at me, because I'll be working, like, on a website project for someone, and I'll spend 25 hours trying to get a pixel to move over one spot to the left. And she was like, "That's just retarded, dear. You need to stop." But and it's true, though. Like, I've done that in the past. I'll spend a significant amount of time working on something that, like, nobody will ever notice, and keeping it from actually shipping, right? And
I relate, my friend.
You get it. You've been there. And I'm sure as an author, same kind of thing. I write something and I'll go back and write it and rewrite it and rewrite it 100 times. And my wife was like, "It was good the first time. Like, what are you doing?"
I totally relate. 3 years it took me to write that book. 3 years. Yeah. That's insane. I get it.
So for me, the couple of things, one of them was a mindset shift that was given to me by, to your point, a friend and mentor, who basically, she told me that perfectionism is the lowest standard you can hold yourself to. because it's something you can never achieve, right? So if
Beautiful.
you can't achieve it, it's the lowest standard you can hold yourself to. He's like, so what you need to do is you need to hold yourself to a standard you actually can achieve, which for me, it was ship the product, right? Ship the service, like get it out. Because that's a much better, canon to measure yourself by than perfectionism, because you can't hit perfection, right? Like you mentioned earlier. So that was the first one, was just a mindset shift.
That's genius. And a gift. So you just gave me a gift. Thank you.
You're welcome. But that was a mindset shift for me. And realizing that, hey, every time I'm looking at something and trying to make it perfect, I'm devaluing what I'm doing. Which is it's such a cool way to reframe what you're doing in your head. So that was the first one. And the second one for me was hiring a team, right? And actually getting letting go, right? And being like, and for me, realizing that like the things that I'm good at, going back to Superpower, is like I can get the systems, processes, get those things in place, get things working, and then just put it on the train and let someone else hit the button to make it live and get it shipped. Because then it's not on me to make sure it gets out. And so those are the two things that have really helped me get over my my desire to have everything be more perfect than it can be. So
I love that. And that was a challenge for me. Now I love delegation because there's an element of trust in it. And all of us, you call it superpowers in the business and entrepreneurial world. And in my book, Legendary, I call it your zone of brilliance. And for us control and perfectionist freaks is we think we can do it all. But truly, you have your zone of brilliance, systems and processes. I have my zone of brilliance, getting the best out of people in an empathetic, listening, compassionate way. And then trusting others who are better with us in their zone of brilliance to just let them be and let them shine. It is the most, it's hard. You got to let it go because this is our baby, right? Yeah. This is our business, our baby. This is our movement, our passion. This is where we make our impact. But letting go and watching and empowering other people and just letting them shine and teach us how great they are and vice versa. It's just this beautiful thing. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, man, my favorite is this podcast. I started this podcast by myself like 4 or 5 years ago, and I got like 8 episodes recorded. And it was just so much work to get all the stuff done that goes into like launching the actual shows and getting them all out. And of course I was still struggling with being a perfectionist then. So it was a royal pain in the ass, and it was like 8 hours of work for every 1 hour of podcast we recorded. So it languished for years.
Horrible ROI, by the way.
Until I finally brought someone on who you've probably interacted with, my assistant Mark, who handles a lot of the stuff for this podcast, and just did all of it better than me, like all of it. And it's, you're like, I don't know why I was holding on to that for so long,
right?
Because it's so much better to delegate it. And like now, my whole podcast, like everything on here, I don't do anything for this show, like literally nothing. I show up and do the interviews because that's the thing that I'm good at and the thing I want to do.
Indeed.
And then everything else gets delegated. So I have wholeheartedly grabbed onto the delegation thing because it changed my life for the better in a lot of ways.
And then I just talked about her, Lindsay, she literally runs our business, so that I can do what I'm good at. She's gotten so good at, no, Tommy, you're not going to do that. A, because you're horrible at it, and B, you're just not going to do it. Neither am I going to do it. This person's going to do it. And so it's good to have those people who hold us honest, because then we'll try to circle it all back in and control it, right?
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because like you want to do the things, like you want to do everything. And for someone like me who's really good at picking up skills, like if my superpower essentially is I can pick up skills, which is not good for an entrepreneur who is trying to struggle with not doing all the things. So it's like I can get pretty good at design and get pretty good at copywriting and get pretty good at at writing the books and putting the things together, and you realize that like I shouldn't be doing all of those things.
I got a really cool story about this. So I've got a client. I got a client. He's about a 1,500 an hour guy, big advertising executive. And he calls me just raging one day. He's a great client and just a beautiful human, and his craft is so special. But he had spent 4 hours repairing a printer in his house. 4 hours. And it was simply him fighting this printer that he could have gone out and probably paid $100 in a store and just bought a new one. And I was like, you realize you just spent $6,000 of your time fighting a $100 printer. And he goes, I hate you. And he hung up on me. And then he calls me back and he's like, he goes, you are so right. And it just becomes this battle of ego and perfectionism and control. And I got this and I can do this. And this printer's not going to bust me. It's just a cute story to magnify your point, right?
Yeah. That's, it's a thing that I deal with regularly. Right? I mentioned earlier, we travel full time, right? So I've got a house on wheels. And a car that's got wheels, and a trailer that we tow the car on that's got wheels. And, you know, if you move your house around every couple of weeks, things break a lot. And the whole being good at picking up skills things means that, like, I can do all of things. I know how to do plumbing and electrical and air conditioners and, like, literally all of it. I know how to do all those things. And like on our last coach, I actually did the renovations from bottom to top, everything. On top of running my business and traveling, right? So we did all that stuff, and I certainly can. But it was like this last year was realization that I'm like, I'm spending so much of my own time doing things that I really shouldn't be, unless I have a particular reason that I want to learn that. Because I do actually enjoy learning skills and doing some of those things. So, like, sometimes it's like, I'm going to do this because I just want to know how to do that. But I have to know where my line is, where it's like, okay, I'm doing this because I actually am going to enjoy it, or I'm doing this because it's a good use of my time. Right. So I've been getting we just spent the last 3 weeks in a repair shop. I paid someone else to fix the radiator on our coach. $11,500 later, but still, I didn't need to do it myself. I had other things I needed to do in my business that were more important for my time and my skills. So,
and it's baby steps, right, Richard? It's baby steps. But here's what we don't want to do as entrepreneurs. I mean, I also have a real estate portfolio that we have a real estate business that my wife manages. And what we do, we have to be careful of this. All of us as humans struggle with this. You know, we don't want to step over like dollars to get to dimes, and our time is our most valuable asset, right? And of all human beings, because it's the only thing that's depreciating every second of every day, and we don't know how much we have. And sometimes we're penny wise and found foolish, and we'll step over a dollar again to get to a dime. And we have to be very careful of that we're not, because time is just as valuable as money, if not more valuable. And so if you're doing it in service and in your business as an entrepreneur and to make impact in people's lives, that's where we need to be. And let the others who are really good at radiators and fixing houses and roofs and plumbing, let them do their craft, because that's what they're good at, right?
Yeah. And like to that point, one of the things in my own head that I've had the frame shift for me has been that, right? Is like, I can do that work, but it's not going to be the best use of my time. And I'm depriving the other person who is good at that of the opportunity to use their skill, right?
Totally.
And to enrich my life, which is a weird thing. Right. Because you have to sort of humble yourself to be like, I'm going to let this person, be a benefit to me. And that's a hard thing to let yourself do.
It's so interesting, and not to related to this. And I see it all the time in very ambitious driven entrepreneurs and people in business. It is super easy for us to give impact and gratitude and service and, speak into people's lives. It is ridiculously difficult for some of us to receive, whether it's gratitude, love, help. It's just like, we'll give it, but what we're denying the other person is the gift of giving that to us, whether it's a kind word, love, help, skill. It's just as much important for them to feel that when they give it to us. So I think it's something that we as a society need to become better at, is receiving. I really do.
Yeah. I completely agree. And it's one of the things that's like the thing I've been working on for getting myself out of doing things I know I shouldn't be doing. is trying to just engender that skill of realizing like, I need to be good at receiving, and I haven't always been, right?
Totally.
And it's like, no, and I think it's my own thinking on it, and I'm not sure how true this is because I haven't really like thought it through, is it's a selfish thing that like I want to feel like I'm self-sufficient. And if I receive from someone else, I'm no longer self-sufficient, which is a lie, right? But it's a lie we tell ourselves. And anyways, I think it's a good practice to say yes and to accept things even when they're given, right? Like, you know, in American culture, you know, like buying dinner for someone else is like a big thing. And, you know, getting to a point where you can, you know, in my business where I can take my family out to dinner and stuff like that, is a cool place to be in your life. But at the same time, when you go someone else and someone's like, hey, can I pick up dinner for you? And you're like, to just say yes and accept it is a hard thing.
Indeed.
And it shouldn't be. But anyways, it's just a thing I've been thinking about in my head.
And you're not alone, Richard. We all, a lot of us, not all of us, a lot of us struggle with that. Like, and it's on some level, it's not just self-sufficiency, but for some of us, and it sounds like for you, it's also, for some of us, it's letting go of our egos and letting them validate us instead of us having to validate ourselves. Like, no, I got this. Yeah. Let me pick it up.
Yeah, let me pick up the check. Let me do the thing. All right. Now, I had a friend of mine, an old client. You know, we were in Vegas, and he was like, "Hey, let me take you out to dinner." And he, you know, took us out to dinner and bought us like Wagyu beef and like nice drinks and stuff like that. And I was like, it's so cool, but at the same time, it's like, you know, just being able to say thank you instead of being like, no, let me pick up the check.
Yeah.
Is like, that's a hard thing. And I don't know, it's weird that it's hard, but it is.
It's a muscle too. You've got to work it. You know, you got to constantly work at it, right? It's just a muscle.
Yeah. So I want to